Welcome back. So this week I came out with my new 26-page lighting handbook, and in it I break down 20 different lighting setups using diagrams, behind the scenes images, and finals, and I talk about which modifiers I used, how they related to each other, where they were positioned, and all of that good information. Previously, a document like this was only available to people who attended my workshops, but I wanted to create something that everyone could download even if they aren't able to attend. At the same time, I also released another digital download, my 31-page Intro to Lighting Guidebook. And this is a great resource that will help any photographer get comfortable in the studio. So to pick up your copy, you can get both of them together for only $25 for a limited time only. So just go to johngress.com/lightinghandbooks. And don't worry, this video today is not going to be a 10-minute long commercial. It's going to be filled with all sorts of great ideas. In fact, I'm not going to suggest that you buy the handbook again until the end of the video. So this video today is going to be all about breaking down one of the looks from the handbook. And so for this image of Jonathan, I wanted to create sort of a behind the scenes feel. So I framed the shot at 70 millimeters and left some of the light stands still in the shot. It was done completely on purpose. I shot at 1/200th of a second at f11 at ISO 100. And really the shutter speed doesn't matter a lot because I'm overpowering the ambient light with the flash by a huge amount, and if I took a picture without flash, it would pretty much just be a blank frame. The f11 is important because I was using that f-stop to get a lot of detail in the shot and to get the depth of field needed so that the viewer could know that the light stands were light stands, but maybe not have them be so in focus. I could have shot maybe at 5.6 or 8 and got the same effect. So just keep that in mind. Normally when I break down a look, I start off by talking about the main light. Well, today I'm going to do things a little differently, and I'm going to go in sort of the opposite order. I'm going to start off by talking about the fill, and that'll make sense in just a second. So when I was reading these photography blogs about 10 years ago, they would talk about how they would put a large modifier behind the photographer and point it at the subject so that they could quote unquote own the shadows. And the reason for this is that they could dial the power up or down of that modifier and get the exact amount of shadow detail that they wanted. So in this shot, I wanted a lot of shadows. That's why I've got my main light boomed out over him, pointed downward. That's to sculpt out his body very nicely, but I didn't want to have the floor and other details go completely black. And so that's why I wanted to put a large softbox between me and him. And I used an Elinchrom 74-inch or 190 centimeter indirect octabox. The fact that it's indirect just means that the light points away from the subject and it bounces all around, and then it goes back onto the model. You don't need to use this exact modifier. You could say use a 7-foot umbrella. But just know that better modifiers usually result in better pictures, but what's more important, of course, every time is that you have a better idea than the next guy. So this particular modifier was placed out there in front of me. It is slightly off to the side, but generally it's boomed between me and the subject. And I turned the light down so that the light metered at f5.6 on Jonathan's face. That meant that this light is 2 stops darker than my exposure. And the reason for that is I just wanted to own those shadows, and I don't want it to have a lot of impact on the frame. So for my hair light for this shot, I used a medium Shimura softbox with a grid on it, and it was back there pointed down about 45 degrees at the back of his head. And when I metered it with my light meter, it metered at f5.6, which is 2 stops down from my main light or from my exposure. And this is where I'm at a lot of the times with my hair light. I just wanted to give a little bit of separation across their shoulders and also to preserve detail in their hair. So if you're starting to look at it and it looks like it's light coming from the hot sun or something and it's way too bright, you probably want to turn it down. If you're trying to recreate window light, you could leave it up there if you're trying to recreate sunlight, but just know that if it's very bright, like as bright as their face, it's going to look like sunlight, and if it's down lower, it's just going to look like nice natural light, or light's coming through a window and bouncing around, sort of like the window light that's lighting up my hair right now. I used to think, back when I shot this image in 2018, that I needed to use a grid on my hair light, and it may have come from the fact that I was shooting in my living room for a while, and that light from my hair light would bounce around, and maybe it would end up filling in my shadows by skipping off the ceiling, or maybe it would end up creating a haze by coming very much directly in the lens, or maybe it would light up the top of my backdrop. And so I wanted to use this grid all of the time. Well, fast forward, I ended up in a studio with fairly high ceilings. This one is 10 feet tall, and I don't feel like I need a grid on my hair light anymore. But if you are working in a confined space and you feel like you're having those problems, you might want to use a grid on your hair light. So let me just go ahead now and show you what it looks like with just the hair light and the fill light together. And as you can see in this image, he is very much sort of edged out or separated from the background with light coming across his traps, and you can see that there is detail in all of the shadows. And now let's add in our main light. So I used a Mola Setti beauty dish. I know it's not really a beauty dish, but it's a 70 centimeter or 28 inch white reflector. And I've heard that it is best at about 4 to 8 feet. That's 1.2 meters to 2.4 meters from the subject. And I have it boomed out there directly over the set in front, about 45 degrees, about 1.2 meters or 4 feet from him. And the light from this modifier was metering at f11. I also had the sock on it for no particular reason. Sometimes it changes the highlights in the catch lights rather, so that they're more even. So just think about it that way. And again, the reason why this light is placed there at 45 degrees is to really create those shadows under his muscles and get nice definition in his physique. And the other thing you want to look out for when you're placing your main light in this position is that it's not too high and not so high that the top of their eyelids are dark. You want to just bring it down a little bit so that there's light on their upper lids, and that'll also ensure that you end up with a really nice catch light. So if you're interested in learning about the other 19 setups, again, you can pick up the lighting handbook at johngress.com/lighting handbooks. Thank you guys so much for your time. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.